This is Roger Simon, and I'm here with James Delingpole of the London Daily Telegraph, aka the Torygraph, who is here in Los Angeles promoting his new book, Watermelons. What does watermelons mean, James?
Watermelons means green on the outside, red on the inside.
What does watermelons mean specifically? Because I know you've been writing about the environmental movement a lot on your Torygraph blog.
I think a lot of people imagine that the green movement is somehow divorced from dirty politics, that it cares about nature and it wants to save the world, it wants to make the world a better place and save us from the greatest peril of the modern age, which is man-made global warming. What I show in my book is that it is nothing of the kind. The green movement is essentially a cloak used to mask its real intentions, which are essentially the intentions of fascists, of communists, of socialists through the ages, which is ultimately about control, it is about tax, about regulation. Ultimately, and I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist here, it is about the creation of a new world order in which an enlightened elite will govern us in our own interests, our own best interests, of course.
What is our best interest?
Well, what they would believe is that in order to make us behave in the correct way, they must impose regulations, taxes, which are being done in our best interest, which is to say that we cannot be trusted to care for nature of our own volition. Therefore, an enlightened class of bureaucrats, of activists, of diplomats from the United Nations, of people from the European Union, people from the government, people from local government, they will control our lives, enable us to lead better lives.
Now, you wrote this book to stop this trend. How do you think it can do that?
Number one, I want to make people laugh. I think if you get people laughing, that's half the way towards winning them round to your argument. Secondly, I want to show them some very interesting facts. You know, I started writing this book. I helped break a story called ClimateGate. I was just lucky. I happened to be reading the right blog at the right time. I got the story from What's Up With That website. I put a bit of spin on the story. You're probably familiar with it. It's about the leaked emails from the University of East Anglia, from the Climatic Research Unit. The Climatic Research Unit is one of the world's 4 main temperature data sets. So these people have a significant role to play in the scientific so-called consensus on global warming. These scientists are the guys who write, they're the lead authors on the IPCC's reports, and these are the guys saying global warming is man-made, it's happening, it's dangerous, we need to act now. This is what must be done. So these scientists are quite important. And what the ClimateGate emails showed is that these guys are acting in an unscientific way, which is to say, for example, they are shutting out the voices of dissenting scientists. There are emails which show how they try to close down magazines which publish the work of scientists who don't agree with them. Well, this is not how science advances. Science has never advanced through consensus. There's a famous line about when Hitler commissioned a paper called 100 Scientists Against Einstein. And Einstein said, why need 100? If I'm wrong, one would have done. And that's how science works. You know, you think about Galileo's persecution by the Catholic Church. Science is all about 1 or 2 brave guys who think outside the box and advance learning. It is not about closing ranks, about using the power of the establishment to shut out dissenting views. And this is what we saw in the ClimateGate email.
So you were saying...
The ClimateGate story was what got me involved in the whole green story. So I started doing my research for this book I planned to write about the ClimateGate emails and what they meant. But I felt a bit of an imposter because it wasn't really my story. You know, there were some very, very good scientific minds out there, economists, all sorts of people, Ross McKittrick, Steve McIntyre, to name the two, the guys who exposed the famous hockey stick. These guys know their stuff. There are scientists like Bob Carter and Ian Plimer, and lots of really good American ones, who are exposing the fallacies of the science, showing, global warming being man-made, which it very probably isn't. That's the first half of the book. That's the launch pad for what I consider the more interesting part, where I started examining what it is that the Green movement actually believes, what it is that the key thinkers of the Green movement write, what it is that inspires them. I think, for example, of Rachel Carson, author of Silent Spring, who was cited as Al Gore as his big formative influence. People like Paul Ehrlich, who wrote The Population Bomb in 1968. What you find with all these people is that they all have a very particular view of the world. Essential to that view is this belief that mankind is not a beneficial presence on the planet. We are, as one of the famous the Club of Rome, one of the great formative influences on the Green movement.
What is the Club of Rome? I've heard about it for years.
The Club of Rome, yeah, you come across the Club of Rome a lot on the internet, and you see a lot of their stuff quoted, and you think, wow, who are these people? How come I don't know about them? Why have I never, where do they come from? They're saying this crazy stuff. Are they important or what? Yeah, the Club of Rome was this organization founded by these two guys, Aurelio Pecce, an Italian industrialist, and Alexander King, who was a Scotsman, a Scots chemist, I think. Both men had a very, very strong belief, and that belief was that essentially the Earth is going to hell in a handcart. It's all our fault. It's because of overpopulation, wanton use of scarce resources, and what they believed is that the only way we are going to save the world and mankind is by limiting economic growth, reducing population somehow. Now, you find this view cropping up again and again in the Green movement. You look at what Greenpeace talk about, what the World Wildlife Fund talk about. It is essentially about limiting growth. And the most famous, the best-selling environmental book of all time was the Club of Rome's first publication in the early 1970s, Limits to Growth. The title is self-explanatory. What they wanted to do was really bring down the capitalist system, because of course capitalism flourishes by using up raw materials and making stuff, and as a result society advances, people get richer, people start breeding, the world gets, the population gets bigger and so on. And these guys thought this should be stopped.
So what you're saying is that the thesis of Watermelons is that behind the Green movement is not really lovey-dovey walks in the lake country, but the end of the capitalist system.
The world does not divide on the lines that Greens would have you believe. It is not a competition between, on the one hand, caring people who love nature, and on the other hand, evil capitalists who want to destroy it. Nobody in the world looks at a beach and thinks, hey, that would be improved by a nice oil slick with pelicans struggling in the oil and dying sea otters. Nobody thinks that way. Everyone likes clean rivers and clean seas that you can go swimming in. Nobody likes pollution. And one of the pernicious myths I wanted to counter in this book is that the green way is the only way. I consider myself as green as any of the so-called Greens. I love walking. I love in nature. I love being in nature. I love stuff like surfing. I love swimming, wild swimming it's known, swimming in rivers. I am not a nature-hating kind of guy. In fact, perversely, what you find when you look at a lot of the stuff Greens do, it is very un-environmental. You consider wind farms. wind farms are not only economically unviable, they can only work with massive government subsidy, but they also destroy the landscape.
Like the late Ted Kennedy didn't want a wind farm off Hyannisport. Yeah, they do.
There seems to be special rules among the British. You know, they don't want wind farms on their doorstep, but they want them everywhere else.
Well, thank you for joining us, James Delingpole. And check out James's own blog at jamesdelingpole.com. This is Roger Simon for PJTV.